Hey everyone, welcome back to the VapePassion show. This is episode 7, and I'm your host Alex. So if this is your first time watching or listening, welcome to the show. For everyone else, welcome back. Okay, so first I want to talk about some advocacy stuff. So in Rhode Island, they're proposing a ban on vaping indoors, which includes vape shops. If you live in Rhode Island, there will be a hearing on Wednesday, March 16th, and CASA.org says that it typically happens around 4:45 p.m., so you should have time to get off of work and attend that. If you can't attend, CASA.org has a link to send your committee members a message, so try to do either one of those things if you can. So just to give you a little update on what's been going on with me, March 11th was my birthday. I didn't get anything because my family, we have so many birthdays in March that we all celebrated at once, and we'll be doing that next weekend. So hopefully I get some cool stuff then. My family probably isn't going to buy me any vape gear, but they'll probably give me some money, and then I can go buy some vape gear. I want to give away from spinfuel.com, so I have the iStick TC 100 watt. I haven't even opened it yet. I've been holding off because I've been wanting to finish my review for the K-Box 200, which I just did a couple of days ago. So maybe I'll have a bit of an update for you on that next week. And if you're interested about my thoughts on the K-Box 200, I just published an updated blog post on the blog, VapePassion.com, and I also published a full review video on YouTube, so you can check that out on my channel, which is youtube.com/VapePassion. Just to give you a short rundown on it, I think it's nice looking. It feels good in the hand. It has a lot of power, but it does have some issues too. I had some problems with temperature control. I couldn't get it to work all the time. I think it probably works better at lower temperatures. But at 600 degrees Fahrenheit, it just doesn't seem to work very well. Oh, changing the atomizers. For some reason, the K-Box 200 doesn't want to calibrate all the time. You have to take the atomizer off, fire it, turn it back on. It's a whole process. So that's kind of annoying. And it has a battery drain issue. I've seen a lot of forum threads about that, saying that the batteries die quickly, and that was one of the first things I noticed too. Oh, and the paint wears off on the top, or on the outside. So it's a nice looking device and it's powerful, but it has some problems. I think for what they're asking for it, which is around $60, it's a little much. It's not too bad, I suppose. If you're a big fan of Kinger products and you like the way this looks, then it might be worth it to you. Oh, and just a reminder, I still have the Halo Evo e-juice giveaway going on my website, so just head on over there. There's not a lot of entries right now, so there's still a pretty good chance that you could win. And just a reminder, that ends on March 25th and is open only to U.S. residents, and you must be 18 years of age or older. Alright, so I received an interesting comment on one of my older videos. I reviewed Vapor Boost's Sweet Dreams e-juice a while back, and it's a zero nicotine e-juice designed to help people sleep. It has melatonin, L-theanine, Earl Grey, and passion flower, all of which are designed to help people relax and sleep. Well, the comment I received was from someone named Daniel, who asked, "Will this help for my anxiety and panic attacks?" So I did some research on all 4 of the main ingredients of Sweet Dreams, and I found that all of them there is a lot of research showing that they are good for anxiety. So I mentioned it to him that Sweet Dreams might reduce anxiety. I can't say for sure because I don't know, and there's no evidence showing that vaping it could reduce anxiety, but I don't see why it wouldn't. So I mentioned that to him, and he actually did end up buying some, and Vapor Boost's Zen e-juice, which I'm not familiar with. I guess he's on a drug called clonazepam, and he wants to get off of it. So I hope that works out for him. I asked him to give me an update, so I hope he remembers to come back and let me know, because I'd love to find out how it works. Okay, so there's this article on theguardian.com. It's a pretty long one. It was talking about No Smoking Day, which is an event that happens in the UK every year on March 9th. So No Smoking Day is run by the British Heart Foundation. What the author of this article points out, Susie Gage, is that there's one smoking cessation aid that former smokers often cite, and that's electronic cigarettes. And if you look at the British Heart Foundation's website, you'll see that they are not very confident about the benefits of electronic cigarettes, but they do talk about it a little bit. They have one page on their site talking about electronic cigarettes and a downloadable PDF which goes more in depth about their thoughts on using e-cigarettes. They do provide some research for and against vaping as a way to quit smoking, but you can see throughout the entire document that they're very cautious about what they say and sound like they're not really totally on board with it. So what Susie says in this article is that there's little strong evidence either way about the effectiveness of e-cigarettes, which has led to a profound disagreement between researchers in the field, which is why some use the precautionary principle as an argument not to support the use of e-cigarettes until we can be sure that they're totally safe, while others believe that harm reduction is the goal. Because we know that e-cigarettes don't pose the harms associated with tobacco use, since it doesn't contain tobacco. And she specifically mentions that it's not the nicotine in cigarettes that cause all the health risks associated with smoking, it's all those other chemicals that are in cigarettes. So Professor Anne McNeil, she recently gave a keynote on e-cigarettes at the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco's annual conference, and she pointed out that there was some concern when nicotine replacement therapy like gums and nasal sprays and patches and things like that first came onto the market. The same kind of concerns that we're seeing now with e-cigarettes. Researchers were worried that because they still contain nicotine, that it would be a gateway to smoking. And like we see today, it wasn't. So what we're often told is that nicotine is one of the most addictive drugs ever, but this is largely due to the delivery method, which is typically cigarettes. And the way cigarettes work is that the pH level of tobacco in cigarettes requires that nicotine can't be absorbed through the mouth. It has to be inhaled and absorbed through the lungs, which is much quicker than through the mouth, such as with using nicotine gum or patches. And that's why neither of those methods will ever be as addictive as cigarettes, because it just doesn't give you that same hit that cigarettes do. And she doesn't really mention how this compares to electronic cigarettes, but just based on my own opinion, you do get nicotine through the mouth and the lungs from vaping, but you don't have all the same chemicals in e-liquid that you do in tobacco that gets the nicotine into your bloodstream so quickly. So I still believe that it's nowhere near as addictive as cigarettes. And I think anyone who vapes knows that too. It's very obvious. And so she mentions here that public health campaigners have spent decades chipping away at the tobacco industry's ability to advertise and market their products. And now they're targeting electronic cigarette companies, even though e-cigarettes weren't developed by the tobacco industry, although they tend to claim that they are, since they now sell it because the tobacco industry was losing so much money from everyone switching or quitting that they had to start selling electronic cigarettes. So now all the public health campaigners see electronic cigarettes as being controlled by big tobacco, unfortunately. So she says, the relative lack of evidence but wealth of anecdote is leading to some confusing policies within the governments. Some governments are treating e-cigarettes exactly the same as cigarettes and not allowing vaping anywhere that smoking is prohibited, which could be really harmful to people who are using e-cigarettes as a way to quit smoking. But yeah, so some interesting thoughts in there about how nicotine differs between cigarettes and everything else. Okay, so I came across this PDF document called Cloned E-Juice, the DIY E-Juice Bible by Mr. Clones. And I don't know who Mr. Clones is, but at the end of the document he describes himself as an American flavorist, freelance writer, and e-juice connoisseur. After years of trial and error, he mixed his way to a better understanding of the craft and decided to share his knowledge of flavors with you. So this is a 169-page document with sections that include the equipment you need for DIY, common flavor ingredients you'll need, and then it goes on into a long list of recipes. And it has popular recipes from brands like Bommies, Halo, Five Ponds, Space Jam, Breakfast at Tilios, Suicide Bunny, Charlie's Chalk Dust, Ruthless. I saw Grim Green, one of Grim Green's recipes in there, and even one from Twisted 420, his Not Too Shabby line. So there's a lot of stuff in there. If you're looking to get into DIY and you want to start with something that you already know you like, then maybe check out this document and try out a recipe. Okay, so the New York Times just recently published an article called Can Nicotine Be Good for You? So this one was written by Anna Fells, who is a professional psychiatrist and a faculty member at Weill Cornell Medical College. So she had a new patient come into her office. In her first meeting with this new patient, she asked her if she was on any kind of drugs, and then the patient mentioned that she has been chewing nicotine gum for well over a decade. And when she found this out, she asked her about it. And her new patient started smoking in her sophomore year of college, which made her brain feel clear, her thoughts were more coherent, and her mood and energy had improved. But not wanting to suffer the consequences of smoking, she switched over to nicotine gum. So the psychiatrist, Anna, she decided to do some research of her own and found that nicotine has been shown to improve cognition, memory, attention and mood, and reduce anxiety. And also people with serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia, and depression smoke at much higher rates than people without those conditions. And the reasoning could be because the nicotine ameliorates some of their symptoms, and that's why they continue to smoke. And why they have a harder time quitting smoking, because if they do, a lot of those symptoms that they have come back. So I found this part interesting. During her research, she noted that nicotine causes the release of adrenaline, which can increase heart rate and blood pressure. And this is something that I see anti-vaping organizations saying all the time. But then she goes on to say that although animal studies have raised the possibility that these changes may damage the blood vessels, potentially leading to cardiovascular disease, the limited data in humans have not confirmed the risk. So when you hear people talking about nicotine causing increased heart rate and blood pressure, they're basing it off of animal studies, which might not relate to humans. So she said that she had called several experts in the field, and they all agreed that there are no well-documented serious harmful effects of non-tobacco nicotine products. And she says that for some patients, a medication can lead to a nearly miraculous improvements, and for others, the benefits are modest. So several days after her discussion with her patient, she decided to go pick up some nicotine gum and tried it. Minutes after trying it, she felt as if she consumed a pitcher of high-octane coffee, and says that it was yet another lesson in how little we know about individual brain chemistry, because what left her patient calm and serene gave her a shaky and unsettling feeling. So this wasn't necessarily about electronic cigarettes or vaping, but because it had to do with nicotine, I thought it was worth bringing up, especially when we tell people about how we use electronic cigarettes, and then you get people trying to explain how bad nicotine is when it really isn't. Okay, so pgvg.net published an article titled "A Chemist's Advice, Don't Dry Burn Your Coil." So Dr. Miroslav Dvorniczak is a chemist who got interested in vaping when he quit smoking a few years ago, and on his own blog, Nicotine Science and Policy, he made a comment about dry burn, which, if you don't know, is the process of firing your coil without any cotton or e-liquid on it to the point of it burning red, which is designed to get it clean from any kind of machine oils or anything that might be on the coil. And it's also used to help position the coil, or if you're doing a contact coil, to get all the coils tightly packed together so that there is no hot spots. According to specialists, dry burning the coil affects the structure of the alloy or the metal that the coil is made of in surface, and may lead to the production of some particles that will stick to the aerosol and be ingested by the user. And actually, Dr. Konstantinos Farsalinos talked about dry burning a year ago, where he worked with material science expert Pedro Carvalho, and in their conclusions they recommended not to dry burn any type of coil. So this isn't new. It is new to me. I didn't know that Dr. Farsalinos did that study. So when kanthal is heated, aluminum oxides form a protective layer on the surface of the wire. When nichrome is heated, an outer layer of chromium oxide develops, which protects the coil from further oxidation. And with stainless steel, there are some contaminants in the form of trace metals, and also small amounts of molybdenum and manganese. So they say that dry burn is dangerous for 3 reasons. The coating of the oxidized material that is formed in surface can peel off during vaping and transfer to the lungs. The particulate matter can cause allergies. Nickel, for example, is recognized for causing skin rash, itching, and redness, and the particulate matter can also be toxic. So what they're saying is that a dry burn can amplify the normal corrosion process on the surface of the coil and prematurely deteriorate the quality of the heating element. But they also say that toxic or carcinogenic effects are improbable since the dose is very small. So that's good to hear. It's also not a good idea to reuse your old coils because, to reuse them, you have to burn all the crap off of them again. And after having used a coil to the point where you need to dry burn it means that corrosion has already taken place and the surface of the metal has already become fragile. So instead of dry burning your coils and replacing the wick, just replace the coil. And they mentioned that just recently heating elements have come onto the market which are made of ceramic. And on paper, ceramic appears to be a safer option than any of the other metals that we're currently using, but not a lot of research on that so far, but hopefully it works out to be a much safer material. So one of the things that you can do, because if you build your own coils and you make contact coils, you almost feel like you have to dry burn it or else you just can't position it and get the hot spots out. So what the experts are recommending is not building contact coils and instead doing spaced coils. So I do almost entirely contact coils, but after reading this, I'm going to start doing spaced coils from now on. Okay, moving on to the next story. So I came across this thread on Reddit titled "To Older Vapers, Life Insurance." This Reddit user, he says, Be careful when you apply for life insurance. Some companies do a simple mouth swab to see if you're a smoker. They only test you for levels of nicotine. 15% increase on my policy. Just a heads up. So I scrolled through some of the comments on this thread to see what other people were saying. And a lot of people are saying that it really just depends on the life insurance company. Not all of them do that. Some of them might do the mouth swab, but if you tell them that you're a vapor, they might not consider you as a smoker, or they might give you a discounted rate, like in between non-smoker and smoker. So one example is American Income Life Insurance. They do a mouth swab, and if they find nicotine, they will consider you a smoker. And Lincoln Benefit Life, a division of Allstate, will also consider any nicotine in your system as if you were a smoker. So Prudential, they have the in-between thing. So this person, he got some quotes. These quotes don't apply to everybody, but to him, he was quoted $280 a year as a non-user, $875 a year if he was a smoker, and in between as a vapor, $400 a year. And then another person commented saying that his agent told him that the only way to get non-smoker rate was to not use any nicotine for 2 to 3 weeks before the test. So if you're considering getting life insurance, look for an insurance company who does not do a mouth swab test, or who does not consider nicotine the same thing as smoking, or an insurance company who will at least give you a discounted rate as a vapor. So I just had one of my articles recently published by halocigs.com on their blog. It's titled How to Cure and Prevent Flavor Fatigue. So you might have had flavor fatigue happen before, or vapor's tongue, as it's sometimes called. But what you might not actually realize is that it's not actually your tongue or your taste buds tasting the vapor. It's your olfactory senses, or your nose. So the way flavor fatigue works is, say for example, you go into someone's home and it smells funny to you. Well, after about 5 minutes or so, the smell goes away, and that's because your mind has gotten used to it. So what happens is that your brain adapts to smells in order to prevent overstimulation of your nervous system. And the same thing happens with vaping. So once you get flavor fatigue from vaping, it affects everyone differently. It can take anywhere from a couple of hours to a few days, or even a couple of weeks. And you might have noticed that if you routinely vape the same flavors, that your olfactory senses will adapt. And another cause of flavor fatigue could be dehydration, because when you get dehydrated, a thin layer of film forms on the inside of your mouth and nasal passages, which blocks smells from reaching your olfactory receptors. Okay, so how to prevent flavor fatigue. One of the first things you can do is diversify your selection of e-juices. But if you don't have a lot of money to do that, then obviously that's going to be a little bit difficult. So what you can do is stick to one flavor for a couple of days, and then rotate to another flavor, but not switching through all of them all throughout the day, because then your olfactory senses will get used to all of them. Another thing you can do to prevent it is by staying hydrated. So drinking the recommended 8 cups of water per day. Since vaping increases dehydration, you might want to even increase that to 10 or more cups. And one other thing you can do is to limit your alcohol intake, because when blood alcohol level rises, your sense of smell decreases. Okay, so let's say you already have flavor fatigue. So how do you cure it? So like I mentioned, you can drink water. Some people have noticed flavor fatigue go away even after having drinking 1 glass of water. So that's a first step. Exercise is another one. Researchers found that exercise can improve the sense of smell, and they believe that it might also have something to do with hydration, because when you exercise, moisture builds up in your nose and hydrates the skins in there and helps you taste again or smell again. Another thing you can do is vape when you're hungry, because when you're hungry, your sense of smell gets a lot stronger. Along the same lines of humidity is use a humidifier. If you live in a dry climate, or if you're suffering from flavor fatigue during the wintertime, consider getting a humidifier for your room. If your nose is stuffed, blow it. You can also try a saline spray to clear your nose. If you're suffering from flavor fatigue from using like a strong flavor, like say for example you vape on a cinnamon or a menthol flavor, you could try changing to a milder flavor until the flavor fatigue goes away. And I've seen some people recommend strong lemon flavors. And if you have the time and patience, you can try Clapton coils. Fortunately, not everyone has to make their own Clapton coils anymore. There's plenty of companies out there making pre-built Claptons. Another thing you can do is take a whiff of some coffee beans. So if you've ever been to the mall and you've been in a store that has perfume, you might have noticed that there's a jar of coffee beans there. So perfume departments use coffee beans because it has a strong smell that clears your olfactory senses from the previous perfume you just smelled. And it doesn't have to be coffee beans. You could also do nail polish or any really strong scent. And lastly, you can try and shock your taste buds, because while this is mostly about olfactory senses, your taste and smell are intertwined. So you can wake up your olfactory system by shocking it with flavored foods or drinks with strong flavors like green olives, ginger, lemons, or sorbet. And if you're really desperate, you can try swishing your mouth with pickle juice or vinegar. So there you go. If you have flavor fatigue, try out some of those tips. And if you ever do try out any of those, let me know how it works. Personally, for me, I've always had luck just drinking a lot of water and switching out flavors. So here's another one I came across on Reddit. This is a vape safety poster, which was commissioned by Kilo E-Juice. I guess they've been sending these to all of the vendors who carry their e-liquids. So it's a really cool, fun, bright infographic teaching you what you need to know about battery and e-liquid safety. So I'll go through some of the tips here. Make sure your bottle is equipped with a child-resistant cap. Store in a place where children and pets cannot get access. Do not use if pregnant or breastfeeding. Store in room temperature. Do not expose liquid to UV. Improper use of batteries can result in fire or explosion. Only for use in designated electronic cigarettes and vaporizers. Make sure the battery is fully wrapped. Check for any dents in the battery. Make sure your battery is not overheating or making noise. If you notice any of these defects, the battery needs to be replaced immediately. Use the correct charger for respective battery brands. Monitor charging batteries. Do not leave charging batteries unattended. When fully charged, make sure to remove batteries from charger. Educate yourself on the do's and don'ts of all types of atomizers and mods. Keep batteries in separate plastic containers. Do not carry loose batteries in pockets, backpacks, and or purses. Make sure batteries do not come in contact with liquids, metals, coins, or keys. And then finally, there's a hybrid mod warning here at the bottom. Hybrid mods must be used correctly. Do not use tank atomizers with hybrid mods. Please make sure you do proper research before using these types of devices. So it's a really cool graphic. There's plenty of other things I think they could add to it, but obviously they have limited space. But I think this is a really good flyer that vape shops should be giving to their customers. I saw some comments on Reddit talking about, with people complaining about it looking like a coloring book or something designed for kids, and I don't think I agree with that, because yes, it is bright and colorful, but it's attention grabbing, and that's what gets people to actually read it. And I think that's really what's important here, is getting people to read it and pick it up off of the counter. There could be a better way to go about doing it. But you see flyers like that for everything, and they're not designed for kids. But I think because it's vaping, that people are always worrying about how this is going to look to regulators. So I get that aspect of it, but I like it, and I hope more vendors start carrying flyers like that and just giving them to their customers. Okay, so this one was published on wheel.cornell.edu. And this article talks about some research findings that were published on March 10th in Preventive Medicine, which I believe is a journal. So the article starts out saying, imposing age restrictions on the purchasing of electronic nicotine devices may unintentionally increase teenage cigarette use, according to a recent study by Weill Cornell Medicine investigators. So Dr. Michael Pesco, who's a health economist and assistant professor of healthcare policy and research at Cornell Medicine, he says, we should regulate tobacco products proportionate to their risks, and e-cigarette evidence suggests they're less risky products. While there's some risk, it would be a mistake to regulate them the same way we regulate cigarettes. So the Weill Cornell Medicine study used data from 2007 to 2013 to investigate whether e-cigarette age restrictions would lead adolescents to other smoking options. And so what they found was that restrictions led to an 11.7 increase in regular teen cigarette use after states imposed e-cigarette age purchasing constraints. Where teenagers can legally purchase e-cigarettes, they may be more likely to quit smoking. So Dr. Pesco, he mentions that both New York City and Hawaii has changed their legal purchasing age for both cigarettes and e-cigarettes to age 21. And based on the results of this study, that might not have been a good idea. And he says that what they should have done from a public health standpoint was to increase the purchasing age to 21 only for cigarettes, but not e-cigarettes. All right, so that's going to do it for this show. I appreciate all of you guys coming and watching or listening. So you'll find all the show notes to this episode, all the links and everything that I mentioned here on my blog, VapePassion.com. Just look for episode 7. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also get this in podcast form. Just search for VapePassion on Stitcher or iTunes. And if you're listening to this on podcast form, you can watch the video on YouTube. Just search for youtube.com/VapePassion. And I'm also on social media where I discuss a lot of the things that I talk about on this show. So if you want to stay up to date on everything there, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all /VapePassion. And if you like the show, I'd appreciate comments and shares wherever you want to share it. And don't forget, I have the giveaway still going for the Halo e-juices. And that's it. All right, guys, thanks for coming by. I hope to see you again next week.